As Kim introduced, I'm Briskey, and my project is titled Holocaust Education, Developing a Website for Educators. So before I go into my project, I want to just mention that this is significantly different than my project last year. It's actually a new project, and this is due to a change in heart. And additionally, I also wanted to focus on the Holocaust, especially after the events in August of 2017. As you may recall, there was a Unite the Right rally held from August 11th to the 13th, and in it, anti-Semitism slogans were used, along with Nazi symbols. Personally, for me, I found that disturbing, and I thought that education might help address that issue. So before I actually go on into my project, I want to show a video. It's a short video, and it's about a strategy that some educators use when they teach the Holocaust. Just as a heads up, this is an awful way to actually teach the Holocaust. It is a simulation. And I do apologize that the video is dark, but I still find it useful because of the comments made by some of the students. So as you can see, the students are pretending to hide away from the Nazis.
You have been found. Your family is being deported to Auschwitz. Your family will be separated, men from women, children from adults and elderly. You may never see your family again.
So for that teacher, they had the students pretend that they were Jews during the Holocaust and that they were hiding. They were then found, and then, as that teacher said, they were sent to Auschwitz. However, that is extremely problematic. Later in this video, there's several student commentaries and reflections on this activity, such as, I felt like I was actually part of the Holocaust, and I thought the Holocaust thing was really cool because it talked about your past and how sad it was and how that happened. So, this is problematic because the students didn't really gain any information about the Holocaust, and as you can see, one of the comments was, it was really cool. Personally, I don't think that's a good lesson to be learned about the Holocaust. It was this significant and mass atrocity, and just by using a simulation like that, it can give students the wrong impression, and the wrong lesson too. So to begin my project, I wanted to do Holocaust education for three reasons. The first reason is that it is limited. The main reason is time. Educators have a certain amount of time that they can, and within that time, they have to try and teach the students all areas of content. They have to decide what's to be taught and how in-depth it has to be taught. And another reason why the Holocaust education is limited and why I wanted to do this project was because of the content. Most of the time when teachers teach about the Holocaust in middle school and high school, the focus is only on the consequences. For example, most of the time it's mentioned that 6 million Jews were murdered, and then a few other things I'll mention, and then it goes on. The second reason why I wanted to do this project was because Holocaust education can be poorly done. As seen in the video, simulations can be used, and simulations, although they might be engaging to the students, they really don't let the students learn anything. And then when some educators teach about the Holocaust, they just use only films. For example, Schindler's List. While it's a good film, to see as entertainment, it really doesn't teach you about the Holocaust. And then also just the general issue of language. So when teaching about the Holocaust, educators might use language that plays into Nazi ideology, like extermination camps. By using that phrase, extermination camps, it's playing into the Nazi ideology that Jews and other undesirable people were less than human. And so, just as a side note, the correct phrase is killing center. And then the last reason why I wanted to do this project was because Holocaust education is undertaught. Before 2013, only 5 states had learning about genocide be required as part of the curriculum. And then just last April, 26 state lawmakers decided that they'll try and make a pledge to change that. Okay, so that's nice about other states, but what about Indiana? Well, fun fact, it's technically not required. Although in Indiana, Although Indiana lists the Holocaust in its academic standards, there's really no task force to enforce it, which means that Indiana teachers, it is up to Indiana teachers to decide if they want to spend 5 minutes on the Holocaust or entire units. As the Indiana Department of Education states, the academic standards are not a curriculum. So again, it's up to the teacher to decide if they can spend 5 minutes on this, or 10 minutes, or an entire semester. And then lastly, why I wanted to do Holocaust education was because, this project was because there are benefits to Holocaust education. It's interdisciplinary. You can use it in history classes, but you can also use it in literature classes. It helps increase civic engagement in students. It makes them want to take action and advocate for human rights. It also allows for critical thinking skills and better understanding of how conflicts and the consequences arise. So for example, by having a decent Holocaust education class, students are able to think about why did the Holocaust happen, what were some of the motivations, and how can they ensure that such mass atrocities are either prevented or reduced in the future. So then, the purpose of this project was to address these limitations, but the question is how. These are severe limitations, and there's a variety of avenues you can go to try and address them. The main one I wanted to do was to develop a teaching block in order to help address those 3 limitations of time, limitedness, and availability for educators. So, anywho, because of that, I wanted to develop a teaching blog that's real research for educators. On this blog, there'd be pedagogy issues, such as simulations. There'll be resources available for the educators, and it'll be a place for educators to discuss their concerns and issues when they are teaching about the Holocaust in the classroom. The second purpose of this project was to maintain a presence at the Rifkin campus for the Institute of Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and ensure that there's continuity for the Education Outreach Coordinator at IHGS. And also the third purpose of this project was to generate interest at IPFW and next year Purdue Fort Wayne. So just as a quick background, the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies is an institute from IPFW, and the mission is to promote public awareness of the Holocaust and other genocides, to encourage and support scholarship, research, and teaching about the Holocaust and genocide, and to promote public participation in efforts to confront contemporary genocide as it occurs. And the location is at the Rifkin campus. I mentioned this because the Office for the Education of the Education Outreach Coordinator is at the Rifkin campus. As you can see, it's not on campus itself, but rather about a 20-minute drive. So although there are faculty who work for the Institute and who direct the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, such as Dr. Carl, the actual office is not on IPFW campus. And so one of the things I want to do with this project was to promote the Institute. So then, the timeline. So in August, I talked to Dr. Ann Lifshitz. I mentioned to her that I wanted to do a different project because I had a change of heart. We discussed, and she agreed to be my faculty mentor. And so then, in September, I initially made a proposal, and in that proposal, I wanted to focus on college students and workshops. During my high school and middle school years, I really didn't learn about the Holocaust. And until I took Dr. Lifshitz's class on Holocaust and modern genocide, I really didn't know much about it. And so, assuming that other college students had similar high school and middle school experiences like myself, I wanted to make sure that they were able to have that knowledge. So I wanted to focus on that, but as you'll see later, that changed. And then in October, Dr. Lifshitz connected me to Dr. Patty Rhoda from the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. And then we talked about what I wanted to do to promote Holocaust education. And then she invited me to attend a teacher workshop in November held by the Institute along with the Temple and the Jewish Federation. And so in November, I attended the teacher workshop on Holocaust education. It was held on a Monday, so I missed a lunch and learn, but I learned. But it was a lunch and learn that was well missed because I learned so much from this workshop. It was taught by Dr. David Lidquist of the Department of Education. He has done extensive research on the Holocaust and how to teach it in schools. Anywho, when I went to this workshop, I received numerous materials on the Holocaust and how to teach it. I have a binder of it at my apartment, which I'm still using to help develop the website. But while at the workshop, I learned several things, such as teachers are facing issues when they do teach the Holocaust in the classroom. Oftentimes, a student might ask a question that they don't know how to answer. Another issue that one issue that really stood out to me that one of the teachers faced was how to deal with someone who was anti-Semitic. How do you deal with that resistance and denial of the Holocaust? So at that workshop, we discussed that. And then another thing that was primarily mentioned at the workshop was pedagogy issues, so teaching issues about the Holocaust. As I mentioned earlier, one of the teaching issues is the use of simulations. It doesn't allow students to actually learn about the Holocaust, and rather gives them this flawed image of the Holocaust, and that because I participated in the simulation, I know what it was like, when in reality, that's not the case. And then, again, the issue of language and how, even if we don't mean to be playing into that Nazi ideology, we could be indirectly just because of lack of knowledge. Because of that, I really wanted to try and address that and help educators. So in December, I met with Dr. Rhoda again, and we made a plan for my involvement in developing a website for educators. So the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, the Jewish Federation, and the Temple, they made a proposal and received a grant to develop a website to help educators teach the Holocaust. And we figured that would be the best way for me to help the Institute and help my project because I really wanted to help educators. Anywho, so I don't believe I mentioned it on here, but in December I also learned that Dr. Rhoda received a different job, and so she was going to be leaving the Institute. Because of that, there's going to be, for lack of a better word, like a hole in the office. It'd be empty, that's it. So because of that, there was somewhat there was some concern that the office would remain empty and there wouldn't be any continuity. However, thankfully, I was connected with Dr. Rhoda in October, and I was able to help maintain that continuity. So I began my involvement with the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. I met with Dr. Stephen Carr, who's the director of IHGS, and we discussed what I wanted to do. We mentioned I mentioned that I wanted to help educators when they teach the Holocaust. And so we discussed exactly how I would do that. So we decided that I can do that by maintaining the IPFW, Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, presence at the Rifkin campus. As mentioned earlier, it is off campus. It's a 20-minute drive. So unless I or another one of the directors goes down to that campus, IPFW doesn't have a presence. And then the main part of the project was to develop a blog. And as you'll see later, that I've been working on that. And so I began research. I was looking at website domains and trying to figure out what one would be the best one to use in order to have sustainability and easy access for educators. So in February and March, I was researching specific concerns educators face when they do teach about the Holocaust. I should mention that I was doing research this entire time, but these past few months I was looking at specific problems. And then I was also working on developing the website. I wanted to make sure that it had a nice, pleasing design so that it didn't make anyone feel uncomfortable. I also wanted to make sure that there was ease of access so that educators wouldn't have to be fumbling around just trying to find one source. I also wanted to make sure that educators know that there's other sources to use as well. And then I wanted to make sure that it could be a community where they can discuss their concerns and interact with other educators. This way they can feel as though they're not alone and they have other options for how to teach the Holocaust and what works, what doesn't work. So, and then one more thing about this website, I want to make sure that we didn't contribute to the anti-Semitic comments, so I made it so that the comments were monitored, so before they could be approved and be public, I had to, or whoever will run the website, had to look at it. So, for example, from the second tab from the right is titled Educator Resources. In there, I made a list of oral testimonies that educators could use for their students. I made sure that they're valid. I found some from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and so I linked those. I also wanted to make sure that educators just had an overall sense of knowing that there are other options and that they can use these sources and know that they're academic and that they have validity. So that brings us to now, the present and future. So after the showcase, I still plan on working with the project. I'm developing more content for the website so that it's more comprehensive. And then that might raise the question of how will educators get to this website? Well, the link will be provided for educators. In May, the Institute, along with several other the Institute and partners will be having a Holocaust symposium for pre-service teachers. So the link can be provided to them at this teaching workshop that's a week long. Another thing that I'm working on currently is working on developing a student group. As mentioned before, I wanted to make sure that Holocaust education is still, as I mentioned before, I wanted to make sure that this doesn't end with me and that I wanted to have IPFW interest in the Holocaust. So because of that, the best way to do that and to make sure that there's an interest is to get students involved. And so I have made a proposal for the IPFW student government in order to have a genocide and Holocaust awareness and prevention group. Because of that, I was trying to find organizations that might be the best suited for this. And Dr. Carr mentioned to me that Students Taking Action Now, DFAR, might be a good research. So I went onto their website and it seems as though it was the best suited for what I wanted to do in order to have IPFW interest. So I contacted them and sometime next week I'm supposed to have a telephone call with them. And then in the future, on April 16th, it's Yom HaShoah, which is the Community Holocaust Remembrance Day. I plan on attending and advertising it on social media. This way, IPFW students know that if they wanted to, they can learn more about the Holocaust and remember it in April. And then success and sustainability. So you can measure success by just looking at the website blog and seeing how many visitors to the page there is. You can also measure success by looking at the blog interactions from educators. For example, you can look at the comments and see if educators are actually interacting and commenting on the posts. And then for success, for the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, that office is filled, and so there's continuity. And then for student interest, I'm still waiting to measure that success because I'm still in the process of making that student group. However, we can see if that will be sustained in the future by seeing if it'll be able to develop. And then availability of information. In order to make sure that information is available, in order to measure success, we should, in order to because of the content, it's difficult to measure success based on information. There are so many websites out there today that are anti-Semitic and there are Holocaust denial websites. So just by having this website be out there and be available, it'll be helping to combat that. And then conclusion, were the goals accomplished? Well, I was able to develop a blog and it is live. Unfortunately, you cannot see it because I guess there's no internet access, but I promise you, it is. You can, if you want, I can send the link. It's still a work in progress. I just want to make sure that all the content is online and available before I actually have the website go actually live and just anyone look it up. And so the second goal was to maintain continuity in the IHGS office and maintain a presence on the Rifkin campus. That was the second goal, and I believe it was accomplished. I've been attending the partner meetings, and I have been representing the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, when the Jewish Federation and the Temple have had their partner meetings at the Rifkin campus. And also I've been working on the website, which was one of the goals of the IHGS office. And then the last goal was to generate interest at IPFW. It's a goal somewhat accomplished, as I have been making a student group. Additionally, I've been talking to a couple students, and they are interested in being involved with a student group dedicated to genocide awareness and prevention. So that is, at least to me, that's a goal that's somewhat accomplished, because this indicates that this is an issue that students want, that students care about and want to advocate for. And then the sustainability of the project. On the previous page, I mentioned the success, but I really didn't go over the sustainability. So this project will be has high sustainability because, one, it's on the internet. As we all know, once on the internet, it can never leave. And so that helps. Additionally, this project should have sustainability by the student group. But if that student group doesn't develop or doesn't stay active, there's still the Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, where they can help maintain that website. And then, before I end, I just want to give acknowledgments to Dr. Ann Livshis for being one of my faculty mentors, Dr. Stephen Carr for being one of my other faculty mentors. I also want to thank Dr. Patty Rhoda, who was the former education outreach coordinator. She really got me involved in the Institute and the direction that I wanted to go into. And I also want to thank Kelsey McQuillan for coordinating all of this. And last but not least, I wanted to thank Dr. Kim Akana and Dr. Craig Oatsey for just being so supportive. They're one of the first people who I told about my previous project and the change of heart. And I tremendously appreciate their support and willingness to help me as I made a new project in less than a year. So thank you. Those are my references. Any questions?
You had mentioned simulations as not being effective, so if I said, Brianne, you have unlimited class time, what would be the top 3 things that you would do for teaching that to a class?
One of the things, so top 3 things. One, the first thing would be the utilization of oral testimonies. Because these are survivors who are actually talking, you have that personal connection to them, and the content is more meaningful. The second one, as much as we would hate to admit it, would be having the students be actively engaging in research. One of the research projects that an educator in the Fort Wayne Community Schools does is have the student research a person and write a report on them and then present it at Yom HaShoah. That makes them be more engaged in the content, and actually it allows the student to know some aspects of it and helps promote Holocaust education. And then the third one, the third one would be just trying to engage the community. So by doing an active community service project with the Holocaust, such as presenting at Yom HaShoah, because by engaging in what happened, you truly gain an understanding and appreciation and that desire to want to end it. Yes?
Just want to do a quick follow-up. Is there a particular age that would be more effective in terms of teaching the Holocaust to children?
The ages, I would say middle school to high school. Middle school, in order to have students like actually understand somewhat of why, and high school because they can truly understand and they're much more engaged. They're able to be cognitively engaged in the content. Just as a side note, teaching the Holocaust in elementary schools, not a good idea because they're not emotionally prepared and that could traumatize them.
I was just curious, did you personally reach out to any high school faculty to see what their reception of this was? Are they supportive? Are they against it? Do they even have time to put it into their curriculum?
Unfortunately, I have not had time to reach out to educators who have been teaching it. However, when I attended that teacher workshop, it seemed as though they wanted a research that a place where they could go to have help. When I was talking to Dr. Rhoda, she mentioned that it would be so useful if she was having a sick day just to be able to go onto a website that she knows is academic and find something to help teach.
I'm just wondering if Indiana teachers are even supportive of this.
I believe so. When I was at that Holocaust workshop, several teachers were wondering how they could incorporate the Holocaust into their education. So for example, there was a biology teacher there who wanted to incorporate the Holocaust into a lesson, and at the end, it was discussed, and the best way to do that would have been in the genetics unit and talk about that racial science.
I got my question answered. Hi, Brienne.
Hi.
Really nice job. My question was also about the perspective on the simulation exercises. Because kind of curiously, in many domains, we tend to think of active learning and kind of forcing people to try to take perspective usually is a good thing. I'm wondering if you think there would be any way to rescue that technique. What would make it better, or is it even possible given the extreme and heinous nature of what actually happened?
I'm an optimistic person normally, however, I don't think there's a way to rescue the use of simulation in Holocaust education. At the end of the day, it still leaves the person feeling that they know what it was like to experience the Holocaust, and the reality of that is they don't. Does that help?
Thank you, Brienne. I really appreciate you discussing this topic. As you know, coming from Poland, my heart is with it. Just as a point of interest, in Poland, every 8th grader is required to go on a field trip to Auschwitz. When you walk in, you don't talk. So the educational perspective, you don't talk, but then you process later on. You mentioned the language aspect, and I'm really glad to hear that. I was wondering if you've seen more studies, more research about more semantics usage of the language, and what your thoughts were about. And let me give you an example that we see in literature. Polish concentration camps versus concentration camps in Poland. Have you seen that, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have seen that. Unfortunately, I haven't looked much into that, specifically. And it really depends. I'm sorry for that. I know it doesn't really answer, but it really depends. It changes your viewpoint because Polish concentration camps, it seems to be placing Poland as responsible, whereas concentration camps in Poland seems to be indicating that these were outside institutes that were placed in Poland that an outside entity brought in. And we just need to be careful if that helps.
Hi, so I just have a couple of questions that have already been visited just a little bit, and so particularly about the simulation technique and the language that you're talking about. So I believe you mentioned, for example, the term extermination camps. And so as an education major and someone who has experienced a simulation, I'm just a bit curious as to why we're trying to leave these techniques within education, because as you have said, simulations can leave a person as feeling though they have experienced the Holocaust, but when done properly, obviously we can't control all children and all kids' minds, but when done properly, they can leave children with a sense of, this is an idea of what happened during the Holocaust, and so I don't fully understand it, but I do know that it was terrifying. And then with the language, using terms such as extermination camps does indicate just how atrocious the events were. So I'm a little bit confused as to why we're trying to stay away from these, and it seems as though we're trying to water down the content just a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll go with the language one first. So for the word extermination, one of the things you exterminate are pests and insects and other things that you don't like. So by using the term extermination, that seems to be indicating that you're getting rid of these groups of people that you don't like, that are less than human. And so that's why we're trying to change that to killing centers. It allows the victims to still have their humanity, which the Nazis were trying to take away. And then as for simulations, it's like, simulations is complicated because we do want students to understand the awfulness and horrific nature of it. However, by having them experience the simulations, it still gives them that sense of understanding that, oh, I know what it was like, oh, I can somewhat relate, when in reality, they really can't because they weren't there, and unfortunately, and they did not witness the deaths of 6 million Jews and 6 million others. So that would be giving them that false sense of knowing, if that helps answer.
You discussed using IHGS to get the awareness out to IPFW students, and then you had also talked about implementing different pedagogical techniques to get awareness into the classroom, and you talked about preferably catering to middle and high schoolers. So did you have any goals for linking that awareness on IPFW's campus with your goals for middle and high school students?
I should have explained that better. So my goal is to hopefully use the student group and connect that to the office. And by connecting it to the office, by connecting it to the institute, that'll help maintain that continuity and interest. So students interested in the Holocaust, they'll be able to reach out and hold workshops, raise awareness, and interact with high school and middle school educators. Does that help answer?
So I love the idea that you're making a resource for educators, because as a future educator, any resource is amazing. What I wanted to know is, how do you feel about using the literature? Because you briefly mentioned literature in classrooms, so books like The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, Diary of Anne Frank. In English classrooms, you read those and you do research on the Holocaust. Most of my experience with that was all in the English classroom and not in the history classroom. So like, how do you feel about stuff like that in the classroom?
I mean, if done properly, it's fantastic. However, oftentimes educators don't go into that much detail. For example, in my high school experience, I read Night and we discussed it a bit, but that was it. We didn't do any research on the Holocaust. In fact, my teacher showed me this graphic video about from footage from the Holocaust, and I didn't mention it, but that was traumatizing and I didn't learn anything. So when done correctly, it's fantastic. It allows students to connect, but it should also be noted that it needs to be prefaced by saying this is a unique experience. There's so many deaths and not everyone was able to write down their experiences. Furthermore, for some literature, such as Boy in the Striped Pajamas, it's a fictionalized account, and so that distorts the narrative, and that should be noted. Okay.
We'll do one more question, and then we're going to have to end them.
Hi, so you're talking about like your website and how you're mainly focusing on the Holocaust. I just want to know if in the future you have any plans to possibly teach other genocides, like Rwanda, or like what's going on now in Myanmar, and like what are the potential, I guess, like differences and challenges to teaching those genocides in comparison to the Holocaust?
Okay, so it would be fantastic to teach about other genocides. Like originally, one of my goals, in my initial proposal, I wanted to raise awareness more about genocide because, at least in my high school experience, we only talked about the Holocaust. Before attending college, I didn't know about Darfur or Rwanda, which is an issue. However, it brings us to the challenge of where do we start? And because the Holocaust has been studied and is the epitome of genocide, that's where we normally head to. So in the future, I'd like to do more on researching and adding content about other genocides, but at the moment we should at least focus on the Holocaust as I mentioned earlier, that it's severely limited, it's undertaught. By improving that area, hopefully we can improve the other areas of genocide.